Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from anthonymorganti.com. This is episode 8 of the video series where we're taking a look at all the different plugins put out by Nik Software. This is our last episode because the one plugin we haven't covered yet is Sharpener Pro 3, the Output Sharpener. Now, output sharpening tends to be a bit confusing, mainly because there's so many different variables involved. What do you plan on doing with the image? Are you just going to put it on the internet or are you going to print it? There'd be different sharpening involved for one or the other. If you're printing it, what type of paper are you going to use? Are you going to use like a matte or a fine art paper? Or are you using a glossy photo paper? Again, different types of sharpening would be involved for the different types of paper. What size print? Is it going to be maybe a 4 by 6 or is it going to be a big 20 by 30? Again, sharpening would be different depending on what size print you're going to produce. Um, Also, are you is it going to be something that's going to be like a person's going to be right in front of it, or is it going to be like 20 feet away? The distance the viewer is from the print will influence how you want to sharpen the print as well. So it tends to be confusing. Thankfully, Nik did a nice job with Sharpener Pro 3 of simplifying all that, and that's what we're going to show you today. Now, my opinion is if you're just going to put your image on the internet on Flickr, 500px, Facebook, Twitter, something like that, I suggest you just use the sharpening that's in Lightroom because most computer screens will not be able to discern the difference uh, between the sharpening that Lightroom does and the sharpening that Sharpener Pro 3 does. So I would save the time and just sharpen in Lightroom and export it and then put it on Facebook or whatever you're doing. Um, on the other hand, if you're printing, you may want to use Sharpener Pro 3, the output sharpener, before you print the image. Personally, I don't do that. I just use Lightroom or Photoshop and print from there. And I like the results. There are a lot of photographers, though, that really swear by Sharpener Pro 3. So I'm going to show you how to use it, and maybe it'll really will work for you, and you'll want to incorporate it in your workflow. What we're going to do is we're going to sharpen this image of my cat Rocky as though I was going to print it. What we do is I did all the processing I needed to do in Lightroom. So my processing is done. The detail panel, I did not add any sharpening beyond the default sharpening. It's a raw file, and with a raw file, Lightroom automatically puts in an amount of 25. So I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm not even touching that. Now, in this case of this image with Rocky, it's very noise free. There's no noise. So I'm not even worried about noise reduction. If you're going to apply noise reduction to your image, do it now. Do it before you sharpen it because you don't want to sharpen the noise. It makes it more difficult to get rid of. So sharpen it now. Now that that is done, what I suggest you do is you crop the image to the dimensions of the print you intend on creating. For example, I have this now cropped already to an 8 by 10 dimensions. So it's got the dimensions that an 8 by 10 print would be. Because remember I mentioned one of the factors that govern how you sharpen an image is the size of the print. So you have to tell Sharpener Pro 3 basically what size print you're using. You don't want to send the whole humongous image to Sharpener Pro 3 and then later on just print a 4 by 6 or something like that. The sharpening won't be applicable anymore. So crop it to the dimensions that you're going to use. Now it's still really not an 8 by 10. It's just cropped into those dimensions. Now typically when we send an image to a plugin, how I usually do it is I just right click on the image and go to edit in and then down to Sharpener Pro 3. Now if you were going to just use this on the internet, I would recommend you do it that way. But since we need to tell, or at least Sharpener Pro 3 has to know what size image this is going to be, what we really should do to do this properly is we export the image from Lightroom in the exact dimensions of our print. Now I have it cropped. as I mentioned many times, to an 8 by 10 dimension. Now we're going to export it. So we're just going to export this image. We're going to go to File, Export. And I want to, for this demonstration, I want to save it to the same folder as the original photo, and I want to add it to the catalog automatically, okay, just to make it easier for us. It's my cat, Rocky. All right, so we gave it a name, so I'm renaming it. It's going to be a JPEG, quality 100% or 100. Now, color space, if you don't understand color spaces or that much, or you're a little confused, what I suggest you do is watch those videos I did. I did 4 videos on printing in Lightroom, and I talk about color spaces more in depth. I'm not going to go into it here because it will just take up too much time. What you should do though is export it at ProPhoto RGB. Now this is only because we're printing it ourselves on our printer. Some labs might ask you to send it in either sRGB or Adobe RGB. You got to check with the lab. Reason why we're going to use ProPhoto RGB is because that has the most colors available. Of these color spaces, that is the largest. So we don't want to limit ourselves. We want to make all the colors that could be available to our printer. It's not saying our printer is going to be able to print all those colors, but we don't want to limit the printer ahead of time. So use ProPhoto RGB. All right, so if you're printing it yourself, if you're sending it to a lab, check with the lab and see what they want it as. Now we're going to resize it to fit. This is the important part. We need the Sharpener Pro 3 to know the size of the image. So we're going to resize it with a specific width and height. We're going to go to inches. It's got a width of 8 inches because it's a vertical image. So it's 8 by 10, 8 width, 10 height in inches. Now resolution, I would suggest if you're using a RAW file, you're going to put at least 300 here. If you're going to an Epson printer, they usually suggest like 360. So do 360. Let's say we're going to Epson printer. We're not going to do any output sharpening here in Lightroom. We're doing that, of course, in Sharpener Pro 3. Metadata doesn't matter because we're going to print this anyway, so we don't worry about metadata. Now, we're not going to watermark this specific image. What we are going to do is we're going to go down here to post-processing after export. This is where we're going to export it from Lightroom, and then automatically it will open up Sharpener Pro 3 and load the image in Sharpener Pro 3. And we're going to do that here. We're going to go to this drop down, and you can see Sharpener Pro 3 is not listed. So we're going to go to export actions, or we're going to, I'm sorry, open in other application. All right, right there, open in other application. And then in this button right here, we're going to choose the application. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to applications. We just have to navigate to it. So it's Sharpener Pro 3. It's right there. Okay, and we're going to click choose. So it's got it listed right there. And we're going to click export. So now it's creating the JPEG from this RAW file. It's going to be in an 8 by 10 with a resolution of 360, and it's automatically opened in Sharpener Pro 3. Now, the layout in Sharpener Pro 3 is pretty typical for any Nik plugin, but I'll go over it real quick, even though I went through it in every other episode, just in case you haven't seen the other episodes. Over here in the top left, we have the different views. We have the single image view. We have this split screen view where you could just drag this and slide it around. And the sharpened image would be on the left and the non-sharpened original image is on the right. Or you could go the split screen view. This is the original. This is the sharpened. You could flip it up and over like that if you so choose. Typically, I leave it in the single view, and I'll click this preview button on and off. We have these different modes. We have the sharpen image mode, a soft proof mode, and then 2 effect modes, and we're going to go over that in a minute. To the right, we have what the cursor is governed or what it's doing. Right now, we're in this arrow mode. We could go to this magnifying glass where we could just zoom in by clicking, or we could hold the Alt key in, and that will help us zoom out by clicking. Go to the hand mode. If we're zoomed in, use the hand mode to drag the image around. And we'll zoom back out, I think. Now, what I would suggest you do actually is stay in this arrow mode, and you could just use Command plus to zoom in, Command minus to zoom out. That's if you have a Mac. If you have a PC, it's Control plus and Control minus. And just to fit the image to the entire screen on my Mac, I'll hit Command 0. If you have a PC, you hit Control 0. So that way you could just do what the magnifying glass does using these shortcut keys on your computer. Now, if you are zoomed in, so your Command plus, and you want to drag the image around, just hold the space bar in and it turns into the little hand. And you could drag the image around that way. All right, so we're going to zoom back out. I'm going to hit Command 0. That'd be Control 0 if you had a PC. And this little light bulb just changes the gray shading of the border around there. All right, now the real meat and potatoes of the program is the right-hand side, and this is the sharpening. Now, how are we sharpening for? Now, I mentioned you could sharpen for display. We're going to sharpen for an inkjet printer in this case, or you could use continuous tone. That usually would be what you would use if you're going to send this to a lab to be printed. Check with your lab, but usually you would use continuous tone if you're sending it to the lab. Half tone. There were these, not really seen anymore. The big printing, I don't want to call it a printing press because it's not a printing press, but it's a thing that prints it that is something you won't have in your house. All right, so that would be halftone, so you don't have to worry about that. And hybrid device, I never really knew what that was until recently someone told me that was actually something Xerox made, a big machine. It almost made like poster copies of an image. So that is again something you won't have in your house. So typically you'd be concerning yourself with display, inkjet, and continuous tone. So we're going to use inkjet. Now, just for a minute, we'll stay on display, and you can see if I was sharpening this for the display, we have one slider right here, and we could turn up sharpening or turn down sharpening. And usually what you'd want to do is you'd want to zoom in and stay in an interesting area like the cat's eye here. And you could go turn sharpening up with that slider, and then you could do previews on, off, like that. So of course I just have it ridiculously high right there. Now we're going to output this to an inkjet. We're going to end up printing this to an inkjet printer. And you can see as soon as I put it on inkjet printer, it changed the type of sharpening it did to the image. But we have three choices here in drop downs. What we have here is first the viewing distance. How far away is the person going to be typically that looks at this image? Now, 99% of the time, just used auto. If you really know how far away a person might be from the image, for example, maybe this is going in an airport and it's going to be on a wall that is parallel to one of those people moving sidewalks. And you know for a fact that that wall is 2.5 meters away from that sidewalk. So you could just automatically put in the viewing distance at 2.5 meters. But as I mentioned, most of the times that viewing distance will vary. So just leave it on auto. Now the paper type, are you using textured fine art paper, canvas, plain paper, matte? Different types of sharpening will be applied depending on what type of paper you're using. So for this um, demonstration, let's say we're using matte paper. Next is printer resolution. What resolution does your printer use for that paper to print? And this you can find in the documentation of your printer. A lot of times on printers, it'll be right on the display of the printer as it's going to ask you what type of paper you're using, and you're going to put in matte paper, and it's going to automatically, let's say, go to 2400 by 1200. So automatically. And you can see that every time I change something here, the sharpening changed. So this, as it stands now, I am doing an auto viewing distance because I'm not sure how far someone will be from the image. We're going to use matte paper at 24 by 1200, and it's an inkjet printer, and it sharpened the image. And you can see there is before, and there's after. There before, there's after. Right away, I could say I'm done, and I could click save. Then I'll print it. Let's say I print this. Let's say it comes out and I don't think it's sharp enough. Well, I could come back in this and then I could go to the output sharpening strength, let's say, or structure or contrast or focus, and I could adjust these to tweak the overall sharpening a little bit. So generally what we got here is just the sharpening strength is the same thing that's in Lightroom when that's set on 25. That's just the overall sharpening of the image. How strong of an effect are you using? And you could tweak that up. Structure really does add the micro contrast between little parts of the image and will intensify that. If you go too high with that, it will really start to get artifacts. So you have to be careful with structure. Also, local contrast, which is a more broader adjustment compared to the structure uh, slider itself. But this could make it more sharp, just by doing that. And focus, again, don't let it think that it's going to make a blurry image sharp. Like you really need to be sharp to begin with, but it will enhance the perceived sharpness of an image that might look a little blurry. All right, if that made any sense whatsoever. So overall, though, what I found, my little bit of experimenting with the output sharpener, is usually you don't have to mess with these. This does a good enough job. Now we have some selective sharpening down here, and we're going to talk about that with the next image. So let's say this is done. All right, one thing I just want to show you, I mentioned you could use the space bar and it turns into a little hand key, and then you could drag the image around. Down here in the navigator, you could just drag this little box around also, if you so choose. So I think this is sharp enough, so I'm going to click Save. Now it's going to save the image, and we have it saving to um, the same directory or the same folder as the original image, and you can see it's right here. But this happens a lot in Lightroom. You'll see this little arrow here. This means there's a metadata conflict for some reason. Click on that little arrow and it will come to here that this metadata has been changed by another application, meaning we outputted this image from Lightroom and it was saved in the same folder and it was put into Lightroom. Then the other program, which was the output sharpener, changed some metadata. So what you want to do is you want to overwrite the settings. Um, oh no, you don't. I'm sorry. It's the overwrite settings will save the original settings. We want to import the settings from that other program. So we click there. Okay. Now what we'll do is we'll zoom in and there's the sharpened image and there is the original image that's not sharpened. So there's the sharpened. I hope you could see it. And there's the non-sharpened. Okay, so you can see it did sharpen it. Okay, so that is Rocky sharpened. Now let's go to this image of New York City, and it's a raw file, and we're just going to sharpen it. Let's look in the detail panel. I didn't add any other sharpening, and for this one, let's add some noise reduction. Just for the heck of it, because there's usually noise in the sky here. I'm not going to waste the time by looking at it too closely. But now we're going to export it. Now this one, I want to do a width of 12 and a height of 8. So an 8 by 12 with the same resolution. And we're going to call this New York City, NYC. And we're going to open it in another application. We're going to open it in Sharpener Pro 3. It's right there. We're going to click Export. And it is creating the JPEG now, this 8 by 12 inch JPEG, eventually. And it opened up in Sharpener Pro 3, and we're in this zoom mode already. So that's good. So again, we're going to do this as though we're sending it to an inkjet printer. Auto viewing distance is auto. This one, let's say stay with textured and fine art paper, and we're going to probably use that resolution of 1200 by 600, let's say, for this one. The main thing I want to show you here, let me zoom out. The main thing I want to show you here, beside this preview, there is before and there is after. I mainly see the sharpening in the trees myself. Okay. Now, a couple things. The modes. This is now the sharpened image mode. When I go to the sharpening soft proof, this is supposed to give you an idea of what the print will look like. Because when it's on the screen, it's not really a good representation of what it will be printed. So this is what this is supposed to be. Does it work? I don't know. But that might help you sharpen the image also. Effect overlay. Whatever has red over it is being sharpened. All right, that's what that means. The effect mask, whatever has white on it, is being sharpened. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do some selective sharpening and non-sharpening. And this will give you an idea of what is being sharpened, what isn't being sharpened when we use these different overlays. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to go down here to this section, selective sharpening. We're going to start out with control points. Now, almost every Nik plugin uses control points, and I talked about them ad nauseum before. So I'm not going to go in a lot of detail about control points, but we're going to add one. So we're going to click this little box here, and we're going to add one to the sky right there. And now there's a little drop down so we could open that up a little more. We have structure, we have local contrast, and we have focus right there. And this first slider is the size of the area that we're actually affecting with this control point. So that size is good right there. So we're going to do that. And what I want to do is I want to take the output strength down. So I want to go down. I want to take away sharpening from the sky. I want to take away structure. I want to go negative numbers. So I don't want to sharpen the sky. Now, when we go up here and we look at the effect overlay, you could see this area here is not being sharpened. And we could go to the effect mask and you could see that this area here is not being sharpened. So that's where those help you. Now, we want to make copies of this and put it across the blue sky. And to do that, I want to just make exact copies. So I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key down. It's Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac. And we're just going to, oops, got to do it from there. We're just going to drag new ones. And this will have the same exact settings as the original ones. Now, when we look at the effect overlay, you can see a lot of the sky now is not being sharpened. Either mask. And you can see how that works. Now, that is control points where I'm taking away sharpening. What if you want to add some more sharpening? So I want to add some more sharpening on these buildings. So I'll get another control point for that, a new one. And we're going to put it, let's say, right there on the Freedom Tower. And we're going to open this up a little more. And let's just get all the buildings involved. Now we got to be careful. We get in the same color as the sky. And we're going to just be messing with the sky as well. So I just want to really affect a lot of the buildings and not so much the sky. So we're going to go to the sharpening strength and we'll turn that up. Let's add a little structure. Let's add a little more local contrast. Add some more focus. We're going to copy this. So I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key in and bring it over here as well. Now we'll look at our effect overlay, and we're still just doing the sky, but we added more to the buildings. So that's what you would do with control points. Now, let's fold this down. You can see we have all these control points. Let's go up to our sharpened image again, and let's select all these control points. We have the last one selected. I'm going to hit the Shift key or hold the Shift key in and click that first one. Actually, it's not working that way. So we have to hold the Command key in because I have a Mac. If you have a PC, it would be the Control key. and you would just click on each of these so they're all active. Now that they're all active, what we want to do is just delete them by hitting this delete key and then click yes. So they're all deleted. We got rid of those control points. The reason being is I'll show you color ranges. All right, so this is another way you could selectively sharpen the image. So I want to not sharpen that blue sky. So what we're going to do is we have this color swatch right here. We could pick a color. An easier way to do it is right next to it is a little eyedropper. You click on that, we have the eyedropper tool. I'm just going to click on the blue sky. And you could see that that is now in the color swatch. What we want to do now is we want to turn sharpening down. Then we look at our effect overlay, and you can see most of the sky is now not being sharpened and the mask. So that is a faster way for this image that has this, pretty expansive blue sky to turn sharpening off. So I want to use the next one here. I want to sharpen some buildings. So we'll go there and we're going to turn sharpening up on that one. Okay, so we're going to, oops, I did soft proof by accident, apologize. And it's hard to tell there, but we're trying to add more sharpening on the buildings. All right, so that is what that does. And you could do a third one, might as well. Let's do the trees right there. And we'll add some more sharpening to those trees. And if I want to add another one, I could click this little plus sign right here, and we get another one that we could add. If I want to get rid of any of them, just hit the minus sign, and we deleted one, like that. So that is how to do some selective sharpening using color ranges. Something you might want to do. Usually, let's say in an image with an expansive sky, you never really want to sharpen the sky. You want that softer. So you would, in this case, it's easier to use color ranges. In some other images, it might be easier to use control points to take some of that sharpening away from the sky. The other thing you could do is, let's say it's a portrait of a person, you could use a control point to add a little more sharpening to their eye. A lot of times you like to do that. So that would be selective sharpening. And really, that is it. We could save this image now. Now it will now go back into Lightroom, and you can see we have that same issue with this up arrow right here. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to import settings from disk. Okay. And if we go in there and we hit compare and we zoom in, you could see that this image is considerably sharper than that image. Really overdid it maybe, but the type of paper we were using for that 8x12 print required more sharpening than you might think. So now you could just send this right off to the printer and print it. Now, it's really like I mentioned, I don't use this. I don't use it at all. This plugin. I'm trying to show you this one. Okay, this is the original image, and this is the image of that's been sharpened. And you could see that there is some sharpening here. At least I could see on here. This one was a little more subtle than the last one we did. Probably overdid the last one. But give you an idea how to use the Nik Output Sharpener. If you're getting great prints from just using Lightroom print module, then just use that, because there is an output sharpening section in the print module itself, as you might recall. Right here, print sharpening right here. You could turn it off. If you sharpen this in Sharpener Pro 3, then you would turn this off. But if you're getting fine prints this way, just do it that way. That's the way I do it. On the other hand, if you think that it's still lacking some punch, maybe it just doesn't do a good job with your printer, then by all means use the Sharpener Pro 3 Output Sharpener and then turn this checkbox off when you print it. And it will print without any of Lightroom's output sharpening, and it was already sharpened by the other program. or the plugin by Nik, and hopefully it will do a nice job. So I hope that made sense. I know I wasn't real enthused when I was giving this demonstration. As I mentioned, I don't use this at all. I really do like the sharpening that's in Lightroom and the sharpening that's in Photoshop when I sharpen and print images. So that's the way I prefer to do it. But again, there are photographers that swear by this Sharpener Pro 3. They anything they print, anything they send to a lab, they use Sharpener Pro 3. So really you have to experiment with it and see if it really works for you. All right? That's it for this final episode, episode 8. Thank you everyone that has watched these videos and all my videos. I really do appreciate it. All right? I'll talk to you guys soon.